Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast / live Periscope show, and it's our Wednesday three-man pod, so I'm really excited to bring on, we have Adam Stanko joining us, and Dave Dufour. So Adam, say hi to us, give us your sound and your voice so we know which one is you versus Dave.
Hey, it's me. I'm Adam. People know Dave, but I'm Adam, and I'm not in the bathroom right now, just in case anyone's concerned about connection or anything like that.
Okay, good. Although it might sound like you are, but we'll make sure that you don't get any extra sound. So, Dave, you're with us as well. Everything okay on your end?
Yeah, everything's great. Getting everything ready to head to Vegas tomorrow, Summer League. Yeah, been trying to not watch Summer League games while they're on. You know, it's really hard because it's like, hey, basketball's on television, but it's bad. It's not good basketball. Although I will say, seeing some of these guys like Bam Adebayo and Jonathan Isaac, like seeing them out on the court on an NBA court has actually opened my eyes up a little bit more to some of their tools. I mean, they're being used in ways they weren't able to be used in college. Actually, Coach Cal had a really funny tweet where he said that, you know, he was holding back Bam, and I thought that was funny because it's also true.
Right.
Bam Adebayo is a monster. Did you see that Euro step?
No.
The footage? Oh my gosh. So Bam is this massive person, and he's got a steal kind of on the wing, so he sniffed it out, took it coast to coast, and at the end Euro stepped around the defender and just softly laid it in the hoop. I mean, you're gonna love Bam Adebayo, I think.
Okay, well, looking forward to it. My problem I have right now with the Summer League stuff in Utah is that the angle of the camera is so low that you really can't see enough. It's frustrating. So, you know.
My wife said that the Orlando Summer League felt like pickup at the YMCA. She was like, "Wow, this is kind of weird, but also kind of cool." She thinks that they should do like preseason games like that.
Okay.
I don't know if I like that. She said it felt more intimate.
Yeah, so. I can see that. It's definitely different. So, well, I think we should get into what we want to talk about. A lot of people want to hear about is the news from yesterday, which we got kind of bungled. And I don't know if we blame Hayward for that or not, but certainly the decision to, or whatever you want to call it, I don't think he was at a Boys and Girls Club when he told everybody, but certainly it leaked, and then we weren't sure. Maybe he was lying about it anyway, but he's at the Celtics now. So let's discuss how he fits in the court, and then we can rip him apart for how he came out later. So what do you say? Who wants to jump in this first about what the fit will be like for the Celtics?
Adam, go for it.
Well, I think, first of all, I love the idea of the Celtics small ball lineup now. I think you can play Horford at the 5. You've now got some different wing opportunities where you could play Hayward at the 3 and Jason Tatum plays the 4. And we already know about their guards. So it seems like Marcus Smart is going to be on the outs now, and he's going to get moved, is from what I understand. But I just really love the fact that we're going to be able to space the floor now for the Celtics. You've got multiple shooters on the floor. Hayward can create his own shot. A guy like Jason Tatum can create his own shot. You've got Isaiah Thomas can create his own shot. So you have all these guys who can create their own shots, plus Avery Bradley you put on the floor. And I really like what the Celtics can do in terms of their spacing offensively. That's what I love the most. And you've got guys that are unselfish on this team. We know Al Horford can pass the basketball, and the thing is, I just think plus the athleticism, the wings, Jaylen Brown, you haven't even mentioned. Like, I really love the opportunities. They still feel small to me, the Celtics do, but I really love the fact that the way they're going to be able to space the floor in today's NBA, and you can put 4 guys on the perimeter. I just love how they can attack from all angles. That's my immediate takeaway from Hayward.
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of those points. I thought we got to see Hayward being sort of the primary playmaker when George Hill was out last year, and I thought that would kind of show us how he would work in Boston. He gives them someone else that can create offense, which they haven't had. You know, Nick and I talked about this quite a bit last season with Isaiah Thomas and how much they relied on him for all of their offense. And, you know, when he went out in the playoffs, we actually got to see more of that motion-based, off-ball cutting offense. But now they've got another guy that can go and get them a bucket, and that's huge. I mean, if you don't have 2 of those guys, you have no chance of competing for a championship. I mean, if you look at Golden State, they've got 2 of the best in the league. Obviously, the Cavs have 2 of the best in the league. Now the Rockets have 2 of the best in the league. And I think that Boston has 2 decent ones. They're not best in the league, but they're two decent ones. Although Isaiah Thomas is pretty elite at getting a bucket. So there's that. There's also like you brought up, it's another wing who can slide between 2 and 4. I expect to see him playing a lot of that. I hope to see lineups where he's out there with Jaylen Brown and Jay Crowder, and maybe they throw Tatum out there and you run Hayward as like the nominal point guard. And just see what happens, like throw all these long guys out there and see what you got. And, I think that on the court, it should be a pretty good fit. As far as the decision goes, Nick, I feel like you might have a take on this.
I don't really. I mean, listen, I know some people on the Jazz side were really upset with Hayward, but kind of like, is it really his fault that it leaked? It might not be. But the only problem then is once it leaked, it sounded like they wanted to backtrack and make it seem like they didn't make a decision yet, which I think was probably clear they did. He probably already had his Player Tribune thing written by that point. And so, it is what it is, and it's unfortunate. But I guess you're never going to be able to get a decision out again without it leaking, it sounds like, anyway. So,
right.
It's a
well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. In hindsight, now that we're 6 years removed from LeBron making the decision on TV, and not dragging it out all this, for these many days. Doesn't it feel like that we kind of are going to head to the point where guys are just going to do a decision sort of press conference or television special or whatever, and maybe we should do this more like that, where instead of having these bigger free agents drag it out and you don't know the decision, right? LeBron, it didn't leak. He actually was up front, like, here's what's happening, and, got to come out ahead of this instead of these stupid, they're not stupid, but they're silly. Let's say that. Okay. These Player Tribune articles are just a little, I don't know. It's kind of like fifth grade stuff, right? Like, oh, I really enjoyed my time, but I'm doing, no, come on. Just go on TV and say, look, you know what? I'm choosing something that I think is better for me, my family. Say you're pissed off because they screwed around with you when you were a restricted free agent. Whatever. Just get it over with, basically. And Gordon Hayward actually screwed over, at least a lot of people feel this way, screwed over a lot of free agents, other free agents who were waiting for the Gordon Hayward shoe to drop. So I don't know if he's the most popular guy in the league right now.
But wait, so he screwed him over simply by waiting an extra couple days?
Yeah, so because we're approaching July 6th, right? So teams are starting to get their numbers and their books their books all straight. I mean, if you look at Boston, they need to move someone, right? In order to make this work. I don't know if you guys realize that, and it looks like they're probably gonna have to move Marcus Smart. Well, other teams, their books aren't straight. They don't know who they've got because Miami might have thought that they were still getting Gordon Hayward. Same with Utah. I mean, we heard as soon as the Hayward news came out, they were in on Otto Porter. You get what I'm saying? So that kind of just messes with the rest of the league. And, I mean, of course, it's his prerogative, right? It's his contract. It's his career and all this stuff. But, yeah, so that was the report I read was that a lot of players aren't really happy with Hayward right now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's a problem. And it's almost like, and by the way, Kevin Durant was able to do it without leaking either and drop that bomb and the Players Tribune as well. So, I don't know. You're right. Maybe there should be some more uniformity, but then again, it's the guy deserves to make his decision and I suppose take his time. But then again, how much more time did you need from the time that your season ended until the free agency is available, right? That's a lot of time to kind of figure that out. So, and then as far as on the court goes, I don't know if I didn't weigh in too much. I think you guys make all really great points. And the context is, against the Cavaliers, right? This is the only thing that we're worrying about right now is how the Cavaliers are threatened or not by this. Without Isaiah Thomas, they won one game in the playoffs against them. And, with Isaiah, with Gordon Hayward, and pretty much the same team, and maybe they get rid of Marcus Smart, do they win 2 games? Right? I don't know. Hayward is not a guy that's going to defend, LeBron. Now, the one thing we have about the Cavs is that their defense sucks. And I don't know if it's going to improve. Right? What'd you say, Dave?
Yeah, it's true. Their defense sucks, and I don't see a path to improvement for their defense. They're going to have to make some trades of some sort. But, I'm with you. I don't think that this moves the needle as much as people want it to. I get that Hayward was the best player available, this summer. But, I don't know. He's like a third-tier player to me. He's not a franchise changer. I don't think he's your number one guy. He's not on that Kevin Durant level, right? He's not on that next level down, which is probably like Harden and Russ and those guys. He's to me, he's like down in around that Blake Griffin level. Can he be one of your top 3 guys? Absolutely. But do you want him as your number 1 guy? No, I don't think so.
Adam?
The only thing I'd say to that, and I'm trying to figure out these mic settings, I may be off a little bit here, but I'll just say this real quick, is that I think what's fascinating is you picked up Gordon Hayward, and yet you're basically only giving up Marcus Smart. So you get much better offensively. You give yourself some more options offensively, plus a guy that can create his own shot. And not only that, but the big thing is you didn't mortgage your future at all. The Celtics still have moves that are left to be made. And I think that's the big thing with all this. The question is, what's the next move for them? And so I sort of would pose that to you guys.
Great question.
Well, I mean, we've all heard the reports this morning, right? Like they apparently have engaged in talks with Memphis about Marc Gasol. And, I think Horford can play next to Gasol. I don't love that fit, though. Nick, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was really struck by why Memphis would want to move Marc Gasol. That was strange to me. Him and Conley are the two that they could build around and still compete, and that was strange to me to begin with. So, right? Am I crazy for thinking that?
I guess, yeah, but you have to realize Gasol's 32. He's making, a large chunk of money, and Memphis is probably going to miss the playoffs this year. And so they may be thinking, toward the future and hoping they can get some younger assets. I mean, they're probably going to wind up losing JaMychal Green, I would guess. They don't have any young guys really that have high potential. The Chandler Parsons contract is not great because he's just sitting there collecting paychecks and can't play. So, and then Mike Conley's getting paid a massive amount of money. And so, I mean, I don't know if this would then lead to them trying to move Conley, but I could see the Gasol thing happening. It's actually something I've talked about privately with some people, just because the age and the money. Mm-hmm. And there's always a risk. I mean, he's 32. These big centers at that age, they a lot of times they start breaking down. He's had some injury history. It's not great. And Memphis is definitely more likely to hang on to him longer and then get less return. But I think that if Boston comes calling with some of these assets, you have to answer, especially if like a guy like Tatum is in the mix. You get a lottery pick, as a rookie. I think they've got to listen.
Okay. Well, and then as far as that goes, getting Marc Gasol is they have to get rid of Horford. I don't think that they would need both of those guys in the roster. And again, I don't know if Horford has that much value. I mean, there's some value to him, but they'd have to get rid of him. I just don't. I mean, what is he coming off the bench? And I don't know. It doesn't seem that kind of guy. So does that make him better? So we're talking about Horford, Gasol. What are we talking about?
Hayward.
Sorry, Gasol. Hayward, not Horford. Hayward, Gasol, Avery Bradley.
Well, I think Avery Bradley would probably be included in a trade for Gasol.
Okay,
which, Nick, like as you and I have stated, I don't know, almost every episode of this podcast, if you have to trade Avery Bradley or Jay Crowder, like your team is probably getting worse unless you're adding like a top 10 player, right? Just from what they do for the team and how they fit into the team, kind of psyche, right? Like
But on that flip side, if you can trade Avery Bradley for Marc Gasol, then you do that in a heartbeat anyway, I think. But that's sort of the point I would make, especially because Avery Bradley now would be having to come off the bench anyway, right? He's not going to start over Hayward at 2. So we're talking about Isaiah Thomas, Hayward in the backcourt, right? Or are we doing Hayward at 3?
I think Hayward probably is playing the 3. I don't think it really matters, though. Like I think, is Jaylen Brown going to start? I guess is the real question.
All right, well, let's pretend. I guess Crowder is still there. I mean, it's it's very up in the air. That's what I think is concerning. What are you hearing, anybody, about that trade? Who is Boston going to give up to get Gasol?
I would assume, people are throwing names out there, but my assumption is it would be Avery Bradley, Jay Crowder, and a pick at the minimum. I don't know how the salaries work out, but they would probably have to add someone else, and so I think that's a problem to me.
Who do you want to keep, Avery Bradley or Marcus Smart, if you're the Celtics?
I don't know. Adam, we can't hear you.
We lost you, Adam.
Yeah.
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 Maybe he lost our audio too because he has no. Adam, we can't hear you. Turn your mic back on. We'll keep talking. So yeah, I mean, by the way,
I got it. I'm back. I think.
There you
right?
go. So
There
Adam,
he
what
is.
were you
Okay.
saying as far as who would you pick if you were the Celtics if you had the choice between Marcus Smart and Avery Bradley to keep?
Sorry about that, guys. Definitely Avery Bradley for me. First of all, I think he's a guy. There's very few true lockdown defenders in the NBA. Like guys talk about it, and there's system guys that are really good, but to have a true guy that you can stick on a perimeter player and really bother him over the course of an entire game, those guys are just rare. I mean, there's great athletes. There's guys that commit defensively for short spans, but Avery Bradley to me is one of the best defensive players in the league and on-ball defenders. And then his ability to shoot the ball. And there's just sort of a leadership role that he provides for the Celtics. He's a very calming influence. He was great this year when in the playoffs, when everything was going on with Isaiah Thomas. He seemed to be the calming voice. Like things, we looked at that as sort of like an inspirational story that Isaiah Thomas was able to overcome it. And I think a large part of that had to do with his relationship with Avery Bradley and the fact that Avery Bradley was sort of calming influence on the entire team. So for all those reasons, I love him. I'm excited about what Marcus Smart could be somewhere else because I don't think he's ever had the opportunity to really be showcased as a guard. But just in terms of the future going forward, like Avery Bradley to me is the guy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. And I'm a well-known Marcus Smart fan. Possibly irrationally so. Like I believe his shot's going to come around. I like him as a playmaker. I love him as a defender. I mean, he's elite as a defender. He can switch 1 through 5, which is crazy at his size. And but I think that he's obviously going to be on his way out. I think the writing's on the wall there. But I wouldn't want Marc Gasol if you have to give up Crowder and Bradley. And I know that sounds weird, but what Crowder and Bradley do for a team, they're hard. Those things are hard to replicate. And I don't know if Marc Gasol, again, like you said, Nick, if you keep Horford, I don't know that Marc Gasol comes in and fits well because it seems to me like Horford and Gasol's a better version of Horford.
Right, and besides, a guy like the position you want to bring in off the bench for that position would be some high energy guy that's like grabbing rebounds and blocking shots. That ain't Horford. Right. It's kind of like you bring in the fireballer first, then you relieve. The closer is going to be a guy throwing junk in the 9th inning. It's like it doesn't work. So. That's why I feel like, but then again, there probably isn't a lot of value for a big guy that can shoot a little bit, doesn't get a lot of rebounds, doesn't protect the rim. It's like, I don't know. Horford is in this, he's one of those weird, like, Cro-Magnon man who, like, he's stuck in between eras here.
Well, he's a great passer, and he's a good enough shooter. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he's a good enough shooter. But he's a great passer and facilitator. He is a lot like Nikola Jokic, and we all love Nikola Jokic, but Horford is to me like a little bit better version of what Jokic is right now. I mean, Jokic is going to be probably better. He's going to surpass him, but I think Horford, he's not a bad player. Like, again, he's in that 3rd, maybe 4th tier of players. He's I don't know. He's not coming off the bench though. Let's just go ahead and clear that up.
If they get Gasol, if you're trying to sell Horford that way, I ain't buying. I don't know. I mean, he's okay, but man, it's just he's an average 3-point shooter, which is good for the big man side, but he doesn't take too many. I don't know. I get what you see by the passing.
Gasol is an upgrade though. Gasol's an upgrade in every way. Gasol's a better passer. Gasol's a better shooter. Gasol's a much better defensive player. And so there is. You can see, okay, well, adding Gasol makes us better, but I think Horford and that contract has to go, and I don't know who's going to take him. I mean, Memphis, if Memphis is trading Marc Gasol, they're not going to take Horford back. If they're trading Marc Gasol, it says we're going in a different direction.
Well,
anyway,
he's not expiring, is he?
No.
See, that would be the only thing.
No. No.
And by the way, the Celtics need to keep Crowder. I think Crowder is the only guy they need to keep alongside Gasol and Hayward and Isaiah Thomas. To me, that's the guy because, it's funny. Nobody can guard LeBron. So it's not like you have to, we don't have anybody who can guard LeBron. Nobody has anybody who can guard LeBron. But you need to have someone who can at least make him work. And, you know, I believe that Crowder can still be that guy, although it didn't seem to be that way in the playoffs. But maybe another year of experience and whatever and training, he can figure that out better. But that's the key here for me is they should keep Crowder. And then that's a nice starting lineup. If you get Marc Gasol, Crowder, Hayward, Isaiah Thomas, and you maybe throw Jaylen Brown in there with that.
Yeah, it's nice. Belt. You lose in the Eastern Conference Finals in 6 games.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah,
I mean,
So here's my question then. Ultimately, you have to ask yourself, if you're the Celtics, who's untouchable on this team? Because you say you don't want to trade Crowder. I keep hearing from everyone you can't trade Jaylen Brown. There's too much potential there for the long term. My question becomes, if you're stuck in this situation, which we always talk about, the teams that are 7th or 8th in the, in playoff seeding is the worst place to be because you're sort of stuck in no man's land and you're not going to end up with a high pick that's going to help you for the future. The Celtics have picks coming to them in the future. They've got young assets. To me, I would put everything on the table. I don't know. I understand the appreciation for Crowder, and I'm with you. I love all the players the Celtics sort of have right now. But to your point, how much better can they be? Can they really be better than the Cavs right now? I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. And you can't just bank on maybe LeBron gets hurt, and then we end up representing the East in the finals,
Well, I want to counter that argument with maybe LeBron gets hurt. And I talked about this a little bit with the Raptors. And there's nothing wrong with throwing a good team out there that just wins games, is in the top 4, right? Like if you're within striking distance of the finals, I think that's a good thing. And obviously they were the number 1 seed last year. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I really thought that they had a chance against the Cavs because of how bad the Cavs defense is. But, LeBron is a juggernaut unto himself. And so, good luck. But, LeBron is right now 32 years old. He'll be 33 by next year's playoffs. He's got a lot of miles. And this is, I'm not predicting a breakdown because I just, we haven't seen it, right? Like, why would I assume that? But if you're these teams that keep coming back and they're close, all it takes is one LeBron injury. And then the other thing is, remember, LeBron's a free agent next year, and there's a lot of smoke that he wants to leave Cleveland. And so, maybe he goes west, and then all of a sudden now you've got this team that's been on the cusp, and you're ready to compete. Like, it's sort of like if you remember the Jordan years where they were just getting destroyed by the Pistons in the late 80s, right? Sure. And then they were ready for that championship run when it started. And I think that you can look at Boston kind of the same way. Their ages sort of line up similarly, like a lot of mid-20s guys who will be hitting their prime in the next 2 or 3 years, outside of Horford, who's a little bit older, but that's okay. He could be your Bill Cartwright. And, so by the time LeBron is done, these guys are ready to just step in. They've kind of been, a little bit of trial by fire right now, getting destroyed in the playoffs by the Cavs. It can be a little bit demoralizing, but look at how they came back last year and then made the Eastern Conference Finals. I thought that this is good, right? It's good to win games. I mean, which is so funny to say and so funny that I even have to say it because we all think, well, if you're not winning a championship, you got to blow it up. But it's good to win games. It's good for your fan base. It's good for your players, especially the young guys. And I think it puts you in a position when it's your time, you're ready to go.
Dave, and to that point, I wasn't even, it's funny, you make the counter argument. I wasn't even arguing against that. I was more saying that my bigger thing, and I'm with you. I mean, you go back and look just at NBA history and you look at all these teams. I mean, the Pistons had to get by the Celtics, before that Bulls run. I mean, you go all the way back and it's always teams that have sort of had to sort of work themselves up to get ready. I mean, we saw it with the Warriors have to sort of get ready. They weren't just a championship team overnight. And the Clippers are really the only one that felt like, they're on the cusp and never really, got over the hump. But I do think that with this Celtics team, I do think you just look at the minutes in terms of Tatum, Hayward, Crowder, Jaylen Brown, and you've got the picks. I mean, is there a huge deal still awaiting them that could be just the willingness to part with one of those guys and a pick could mean you're getting a superstar. Now, granted, I'm with you. Gasol's probably not that guy that I would necessarily target in that case, especially because his skill set's similar to Horford. But I do think that if it came down to it, like to me, Jaylen Brown wouldn't be untouchable. I don't think Crowder would be untouchable. Now, dealing a few of them, yes, I think that's when you start to get in trouble. But
I sort of look at that team and say, where are the minutes going to come from? I mean, we know Marcus Smart's gone, but if you assume Isaiah Thomas is going to get the minutes that he's going to get, I mean, and we know what Hayward's going to get in terms of minutes-wise. Tatum, Brown, Crowder, Avery Bradley. I mean, where are the minutes coming from?
There's 144 minutes in the 2 through 4 spot, and you've got like 5 guys that need minutes.
Yeah. Well, you know, I speaking of minutes and other guys that need minutes, I think we need to give some to Gallinari and to Millsap. So let's break into a couple of those trades because it's kind of interesting to see what's going on both in Denver and LA. Let's just start with LA because I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are about this. You know, there's sort of this weird trade that kind of happened. Basically, it's Gallinari is now in LA. So let's look at that first so we can kind of break everything else out. You have a front court of Gallo, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. And a backcourt of Patrick Beverley. And I don't even know who's going to start as the 2 guard for them. I don't even know at this point.
Yeah, they're not done yet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who they're looking at to kind of play that 2 spot. But
like Jamal Crawford wants. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, he wants to go to the Lakers. I don't know. But so what do we make of that front court? Is that it seems kind of bizarre to me? But what do you guys? What's your immediate reaction?
I think Danilo Gallinari is a 4 in the NBA. I don't think he can guard guys on the wing anymore, especially after the knee injury. I think that I think he next to Blake is a fine fit. Like if Blake is like a small ball 5 for spot minutes, I think that's a good fit. I think Gallo next to DJ is a good fit because Gallo can stretch the floor and he can shoot. But I think Gallo next to Blake and DJ is funky. Just like kind of, Blake next to DJ is a little funky unless he's going to be the nominal point guard, really facilitating from the elbows and stuff like you and I have talked about before. So I don't love the signing. 3 years, $65 million is a ton of money for something that may not work out. And I don't know how much there must have been demand for Gallinari. I mean, he's not a bad player, and he would have fit in a lot of places, but I don't know that the Clippers were among those that I would rank highly as fits for Gallo.
I agree, and I think that you're right. What you're saying as far as the fit is, it's very strange. It's not a great price for them either. Although I think we need to stop doing. Here's my big idea for the salary stuff is we have to stop looking at the numbers and just start using it as a percentage of the salary cap, right? Because that way we can finally at least compare to like the years before. Because $20 million is not what it was 3 years ago, and so that's
20% of the cap though.
What's that?
20% of the cap.
It is.
Yeah, so the cap is $99 million.
Right, but I want to go back 5 years ago and look at like what a starting power forward, but percentage of the cap it was, because we knew a starting power forward back then was a lot less than $20 million. But either way, that's what I need to look at. But it's weird, and it's almost like Gallinari probably had some other better choices. Now, as far as I could tell, that was a trade. It wasn't a signing in some weird way.
Well, it was a sign-in trade. So the way it worked out, it actually. Because of the Clippers cap situation, they really needed the sign and trade to happen like this. They were able to send salary to Atlanta along with a 2019 first round pick from the Clippers, which could be a lottery pick. Yeah. And then Denver, a lot of people were curious, like they thought that Millsap was going to be involved in the trade to Denver, but it didn't make any sense for Denver to sign and trade with Millsap because it actually it limits the way that they could structure his contract. They couldn't do the non-guaranteed 3rd year. They would miss out on bird rights after 2. So basically, they would have no hope of keeping him beyond 2 seasons. And so it made no sense, which is why it was good that he wasn't included. But Denver gets a 2nd-round pick just for facilitating this deal. And that's a no-brainer because now you've got Denver, I think, needs to move a contract probably for Reed. And now you've got this 2nd-round pick as an extra sweetener. They've got a ton of assets, and now they just got an extra one. I mean, these 2nd-round picks are valuable now. So, it was a sign-and trade. It actually hard caps the Clippers. So the Clippers now, the tax line's 119. They can't go over 125, which is the hard cap apron. I guess that's fine. It's only 1 year, but when you've got a roster that's as weird as theirs is right now, I mean, they may be starting Austin Rivers at the 2. You don't really love that, but that was the only way they were getting it done. I think they only had the mid-level exception, so like $8.5 million or something that they could have offered Gallo, and that's not getting it done because I think there was some demand on the market.
Fair enough. Adam, what are your take on the court about how this is going to fit together?
Well, it's interesting. We knew they wanted shooting, right? You knew that the Clippers sort of felt like, okay, we need and the pairing of, I agree, the Blake Griffin, Danilo pairing to me is really fascinating. Like all of a sudden, you know, whether it's Blake working out of the post and Danilo outside the 3-point line, I think there's something there. I think that it could be good. The only issue for me is he going to stay healthy? I mean, this is a guy that hasn't played 70 games in the last 4 years. I mean, that's crazy to me. He's only 28 years old, and yet with his injury history, I mean, he never seems to be able to stay on the court consistently. And that is what would have me worried. And plus, you know, to Dave's point, I mean, if he's also playing the 4, it's clunky. But I sometimes wonder if just the Blake DeAndre situation is clunky. I mean, yes, it's fun. Everyone loves the fact that, you know, it's Lob City and those guys are a lot of fun to watch in general. And I think I really like Blake Griffin as a player. I like the fact that he can pass. I'm disappointed in some of the footwork sometimes in the post. And Coach, I know you've talked about that at length. But and I like DeAndre Jordan for all that he can do. But I just my issue is just in general. I almost look at the DeAndre Blake pairing in general as being somewhat clunky, and so until that sort of gets sorted out, yeah, it's exciting that Blake's coming back to LA, and now they have another piece that's interesting. But I don't know. To me, without Chris Paul too running things, like how much are we going to see Blake actually bringing the ball up? I think
Blake's the point guard.
Yeah,
Blake's the point guard. Yeah.
And so how does that operate? How does that work in terms of the long term is sort of the question that I ultimately have. And then this Austin Rivers thing, I'm always fascinated by the team dynamics as well. And what Glenn Davis has said about Austin Rivers over the course of this past year, what's been, you know, behind the scenes implied by Chris Paul about Austin Rivers and the Doc Rivers thing for the first time. Like all of a sudden, is there some internal stuff with the team for the first time with the Clippers? It was always sort of, hey, we're sticking together. We have JJ Redick was part of this. He talked about it on his podcast. We have this cohesive team. And now all of a sudden, for the first time, Redick's gone. Chris Paul's gone. We're hearing Austin Rivers is causing these issues. Glenn Davis is making comments from the peanut gallery. So all of a sudden, to me, I'm now worried about team chemistry as well as just what we already see on the court.
And don't forget, Redick was probably gone before the playoffs even started, because his body language was terrible. Like, we are so far from the Ubuntu days in Boston. and you know, like, a lot of that is, I think that Chris Paul, as for as great of a player as he is and as much of a leader on the court, I think that he's got a personality that tends to irk some guys that he plays with. He's always chirping at them. If you make a mistake, I mean, he's on you about it. And there are some guys that respond well to that sort of thing. I think the guys in Boston responded well to that when KG would get on him. And maybe it was just that KG was more well-respected or well-liked outside of, you know, that stuff. And I don't know if they like Chris Paul as much. Yeah, I don't know. I'm totally speculating on that, but
it's also
things are not great.
The way you do it, and I think that a lot of times like KG to me didn't necessarily come from a place of anger when he would call, you know, get on you and whatever. Whereas, you know, just always, and I know this is all just me looking at it from afar, but it did feel like it was anger with Chris Paul. He would be angry with you and frustrated, and that's the kind of thing that wears on you. And you're right, it's like, I want to hold him up as the gold standard for point guard play, but there is that issue that also affects his play, and he has lost his stuff.
The faces, the disrespect on his face when he looks at these guys. My wife likes to say it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and I feel like that's a large part of the thing with Chris Paul is, like, other players probably criticize their teammates the same way, but it's the way like that he like phrases it, and maybe the way he looks at people and stuff like that. Yeah. So,
and as far as the pairing of like the two bigs for the Clippers, the bottom line is, if you're going to try and do that now, then they have to both be plus defenders, like really good defenders. I think that's how you need to do it, and that's how you justify having them, especially if the power forward guy isn't the 3-point shooter like which Blake is not. And Blake is not a playmaker at all on the defensive end. And I kind of want to say he's bad, but at the very least, he doesn't make any plays on that end. And that's the real problem. And by the way, I was going through a lot of footage when I was looking for the Chris Paul, how that's going to work with James Harden. And I went back to when Collison was with them. And, you know, I must have watched like 200-300 clips. I got to tell you, like, when you get back and you really look at the big view of like what the Clippers' issues were, why they didn't break through, It just feels like it was Blake. It is Blake. It's the way he plays. It just sort of holds them back and puts to the ceiling. The way he can't attack on the catch, and the way he's, he's in that Melo camp as far as like stopping the ball, and has never really gotten
stuff like that.
Probably because his passing is better. He doesn't get that kind of shit for that, but he really is a ball stopper. So that's an issue. Yeah.
For the people playing the B-ball breakdown drinking game, Adam did mention Blake Griffin's footwork, and we didn't do it. So I'm just throwing that out there, just for the record, for people keeping score at home. This is the first time ever that we talked about Blake and didn't bring up his footwork. So,
right. All right.
One thing though, last before you move on to something else. I'm curious about the Austin Rivers situation. For the first time in his career, he's going to get a chance to be let go. Chris Paul's not going to hold him back. He doesn't have the injuries that he had early on in his career. I think you might see like a mini numbers explosion from Austin Rivers. I think this is going to be a breakout year for him offensively. He's a guy that he's talked about so much about lacking confidence early in his career.
Nick's face right now is amazing. Listen, you know what? Hang on. You know what? I'm going to stick up for Adam here. Austin Rivers is actually not a bad player. He's not a good player necessarily, but he's not a bad player, and he's actually a decent defender. He is not. This is not like New Orleans Pelicans Austin Rivers. He's a little bit better. I love that you switched the camera to your face. This is the best.
Hey, I'm a director.
But that's right. But really, like, he's actually not a bad player. Now, is he worth what he's getting paid? I don't know about that. But like you said, you have to adjust your expectations based on the cap and things like that. But I'm with you. I mean, if nothing else, his usage is going to go up. I wish that he was better at moving the basketball. And that feels like it's going to be a problem. Now, if they do keep everyone around, Pat Beverly, I think, is a great point guard to have out there. If you want ball movement, he's great at that. He can hit the spot up three. He can actually initiate the offense. And I think that he may make up for some of the other guys stopping the ball. Gallo's not going to stop the ball. He's a great passer. Blake is a great passer. Maybe this unlocks something. Maybe we see Austin Rivers become like this super cutter, like Gary Harris or something like that. I mean, we don't know yet. And I mean, is Doc the guy to coach this team to what I'm envisioning? I don't know about that either.
Well, by the way, I knew when I called up Austin Rivers' stats, I was going to be surprised by how many points he scored last year per game because, it ended up being 12. And he didn't shoot that great. He shot okay from three, but again, a lot of that has to do with sort of Chris Paul being out there and being able to throw the right kind of dimes for him perfectly. So, I don't know. I mean, if he's going to be the starting guard, the way he shoots, it's like I just don't see it. And also, there was some meme that went around that he was like, a really great defender. He's their best perimeter defender. And I don't see that at all.
No, that's not true. But he is not a negative defender. Let's just put it that way. He's not a negative player. Okay, he's okay. I mean, I know that like saying okay is like saying he's a Hall of Famer nowadays. Just like saying that a guy is not great means he's trash. It's funny. Like we swing both ways. But he's okay.
Okay.
He's not necessarily worth that contract, but he's okay. And I don't think he should start. But he's probably going to. Like, I just don't see a path to them. I mean, like, are they going to sign Nick Young to start? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, maybe the homecoming coming back to the Clippers. We'll see. I mean, it's funny because the Warriors, I think, really like Nick Young and would want to sign him. And he probably would work out pretty well there, believe it or not. But they just signed Caspi, which is a different position, but you're kind of like, they're kind of running out of space here. I don't know if they have any other space to sign anybody now. And that's a really great pickup as well, right? As far as whose audio just lost? Oh, no.
Omri Caspi to the Warriors is such an amazing signing. I threw this lineup idea out there, and basically I was like, you could run Curry, Clay, Caspi, KD, and Draymond Green out there, and that's probably like a 200 offensive rating lineup. I mean, that they're just going to score so much. Everyone remembers the game from a couple years ago. Curry and Caspi going back and forth. They hit like 9 threes combined in 3 minutes. Now imagine that, but with them sharing the court. I mean, they basically, the rich got richer here. The space got spacier. They just increased their space so much. He can play 3 and 4. Could probably spot some minutes at the 5, like as a super small shooting 5. because rim protection like on that team comes from different places. And so, yeah, I mean, I love that signing. It's a value signing. I thought that they should have tried to get him last year at the before the playoffs instead of Matt Barnes. I thought he would have been great then. Yeah, so I love that signing, and everyone is, when the Warriors, it's sort of like the Spurs, right? The Warriors have gotten to this Spurs level. Every time they sign somebody, it's like, oh, perfect. Of course they signed Omri Caspi. Oh, perfect. Man, right. The Warriors just keep on making the right moves. But of course, this is how you win games, right? It's like these fringe moves really make a big difference.
Isn't it true, though, that also to that point, the Spurs and the Warriors, that when you ask a guy to take on a particular role as opposed to turning him into a starter and asking him to score for you or asking him to be your primary defender, whatever the case may be, that all of a sudden that guy can look so much better. I mean, yes, certain guys, like we say, they get implemented into the system, but it's almost like when you've created such a deep roster and you have so much talent on your team that all of a sudden it's, okay, you're going to come in and spell for 6 minutes a game and, be a spot up shooter for us. All of a sudden you're like, oh, this is tremendous. But meanwhile, if we're talking about him going to the Clippers, for instance, we'd be now saying the exact same thing about sort of similar stuff we were saying about Gallinari. Like, this can't be the answer for you.
Well,
it's all about expectations.
But by the way, the other the next level of that connection is they're like, okay, these are the exact shots that you are going to get in our offense. It's like the Danny Green effect, where Danny Green couldn't even make the last place Cavaliers, but when he goes to the Spurs and he knows exactly what to practice in that first fall or that first summer, and he's ready to go. It's the same thing here, where they can have Omri Caspi sort of in the same way. And here's what's frustrating to me, because the only team in my mind that has the ability to threaten the Cavaliers in the East is the only team that did nothing so far, and that's the Wizards. So here you have the Warriors, who are doing, picked up a couple great little pieces here, and they're going to reload and be ready to go. And even though Ian Clark's leaving, there's no problem there. And here's the Wizards, where I think that they're probably as close as anybody in the East, and they just got stuck with Otto Porter having to deal with his contract situation and having a match or whatever that's going to be. And it's that's kind of frustrating, isn't it?
Well, this is that fourth dimensional chess stuff, right? The Nets forcing the Wizards to sign him to that 4-year, $106 million max deal, which, we've been saying all year, he's getting a max, right? Whether you consider him a max player in the grand scheme of things is different than a max contract. And so, they are kind of now stuck. They didn't have any money anyway, and now they're kind of stuck. They'll need to move. I'm assuming they need to move Gortat, because I doubt anyone's taking Mahinmi. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The cap right this season or this summer is so tricky. Nobody has any cap space. We saw the market dry up so quick for point guards. Think about that. 6 months ago, we were saying, man, George Hill is probably going to get a max on the open market. And he just signed in Sacramento 3 years, $57 million. He got $19 million a year, which is far from his max. So, things were weird this past week.
Yeah, it's really frustrating on that end, because the Warriors don't have money. They're all tied up too, and and by the way, it's funny because the Clippers for all these years also, Doc Rivers is terribly, he's locked them in. He can't do anything because of the contracts, and yet every year he's pulled off something to get different players in. So it's there are ways, I suppose, you're supposed to be able to do this stuff, and so that's what's frustrating. Dave,
we have breaking news.
Yes.
Breaking news. And it's funny because we were just talking about this, but Nick Young has agreed to a 1-year contract with the Golden State Warriors. So
they were able to squeeze him in.
There it is. So they signed him. I believe this is their taxpayer mid-level, $5.2 million. So I'll have to look at the cap sheet, but
right.
Good signing. We talked about this when it was a rumor that we both liked it, especially since we saw him give a shit on defense last year, and he actually was pretty decent. He's another shooter. They're not going to ask him, just like Caspi, they're not going to ask him to do too much. It's not like, hey, Nick, we want to bring you in. We want to play you 38 minutes a game, and we want you to be the primary initiator on the offense. Can you do that? No. You're going to play 8 to 10 minutes a game. You're basically going to be Ian Clark, but bigger. Can you do that? Perfect.
Yeah.
The rich got richer.
Well, no,
I love it.
By the way, there's one more level to that. As I'm trying to tweet everyone out and tell them that we're talking about this. Here we go. It is. Are you ready? You mentioned that he actually gave a shit on defense last year. Well, who inspired him to give a crap on defense? Luke Walton. I don't think it would be that difficult for Steve Kerr to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Luke, like, give us some insight. What were the things that you did to get him motivated to play defense like that, last year?" So that's another level where they're going to be able to be, tap into that. And because again, I'm the first guy to admit, like, I was shocked at how well he was making plays, and he was in his stance, and he was trying at least. And can you imagine the shooting, the shots he's going to get in Golden State? I mean, Adam, you just, you're going to be up there. It's going to be, you better like make sure that your house doesn't burn down. It's going to be so hot over there.
It's unreal what they're doing right now. I'm just blown away. And here's the crazy thing that, I used to work on Scott Van Pelt and Russillo's on their show. I used to produce their show for television. And when I was doing that, we had a segment, Wizards Daily. And it featured all of these terrible Wizards plays that were taking place every day. And they featured JaVale McGee, Nick Young, Andre Blatche, Deshaun Stevenson. But the point is that, like, that's what the Wizards can do. When you reach this point where you are so good, I tweeted about this the other day and said, like, they're just finding new ways to challenge themselves. They're now bringing in these Wizards that were like the joke from a couple of years ago. But, like, again, when you have a team that is so stable, the coaching staff is so stable, the veteran core is so stable, you can make these moves and bring guys in that just take advantage of their strengths. And so Nick Young with open shots and not forcing the issue and playing defense, like, we're going to see the Nick Young that Nick Young has always believed that he was, like all of a sudden we're seeing Swaggy P to like the highest level that we're going to be able to see. And I can't believe it that these teams can bring them in. And you bring up Doc Rivers and you say, like, we look around, and I swear every week you can make this same argument. The top GMs in the league always find a way to make these moves and always can convince these players to come in. And the top executives always pull it off, regardless of what their immediate cap situation is, regardless of what it is long-term. Pat Riley, R.C. Buford, Daryl Morey. We see the same guys making the same wise moves over and over again. And Bob Myers, of course, is in that class with those guys.
Well, we'll have to see how that plays out, but certainly you can argue the Warriors might have won the free agency so far this year with what they've done.
And won the draft. Think about that. They didn't even have a draft pick, and they won the draft. They got Jordan Bell and Boucher. I mean, like, again, this is how teams build sustainability and stay good. Like, I mean, they basically just said, you know what? What have the Spurs been doing for the last 20 years? Let's do that.
Yeah.
And they did it. And you look at the Cavs, and I think, to talk about David Griffin again, I think this was part of the issue, right? Like, as David Griffin wanted to switch to a sustainability model. Hey, what do we do if LeBron's not happy living in Cleveland? And you try to switch to this model, but if the ownership doesn't want to do it and wants to just keep, finding splashy names or whatever, well, you're on the outs and you're looking for a job possibly in New York. So,
yeah. Well, we shall see how that all plays out. But fantastic show today. We caught through a lot of stuff in depth this time, so I'm glad we can get through there. And you can hear all this stuff in full if you want to hear the whole podcast. We're going to drop this right away this afternoon, so you can tune into iTunes and Stitcher or wherever else you want to do. So great stuff. Anything you guys want to plug while we're here? We're finishing up.
No, I think everybody knows how to find me at this point. Adam.
Okay. Adam, you too?
Plug your podcast.
I'm on Naismith Lives. Great Point Podcast. You can catch interviews on that, and 40-Year Coach Podcast. I've been now hosting that as well. We just did one with Josh Pastner a couple weeks ago. So college coaches, mainly the main subject there. But thank you, guys. I always appreciate being on with you.
Awesome. Well, great stuff. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, guys?
Absolutely.